anyway.
On our second Movie Night Adventure season, we've covered quite a bit of ground, from The Wizard of Oz to The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress, Fitzcarraldo, and Romancing the Stone. Tonight we're going to end this month with one of the greatest films ever made, Lawrence of Arabia.
Only two kinds of creature get fun in the desert, Bedouins and gods, and you're neither. Take it from me. For ordinary men, it's a burning, fiery furnace.
No, Dryden. It's going to be fun.
It is recognized that you have a funny sense of fun.
When most people think of the historical epic, they may think of something religious like Ben-Hur, or the movie Exodus about the founding of Israel, or maybe Spartacus. However, I guess that many people would think of Lawrence of Arabia. It's been one of the most influential, sprawling epics of all time, even influencing our science fiction, from Dune to Star Wars, and films like Scorsese's Last Temptation of Christ.
Young master, how does it feel to walk on a new world?
Exciting, to say the least.
The director, David Lean, was no stranger to the historical epic. In 1957, he directed another one of the films seen as the greatest ever made, The Bridge on the River Kwai, an adaptation of the World War II novel by the French author Pierre Boyer, about the construction of the Burma Railway by English prisoners of war. When the bridge on the River Kwai was met with a massive success, making $30.6 million, the equivalent of $319 million today dollars at the box office.
Officer, sir! British officer! Here to blow up the bridge! Blow up the bridge! Yes, sir. Yes, sir. British commando orders, sir! Blow up the bridge! Yes, sir. Look out, there's no... No! No! Help!
The British director was asked if he had any other ideas. The story of T.E. Lawrence, the British archaeologist turned military officer who helped spark the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire during World War I, was an insanely popular British legend that had long been considered impossible to make it to a film after a dozen attempts had failed.
When it was decided we'd make Lawrence, we first of all had to meet with his brother, Professor Arnold Lawrence, because Lawrence, of course, was dead, and all his affairs and his copyrights were in the hands of his brother. And we all thought that the worst thing that he would think was that Hollywood are somehow horning in on 7 Pillars of Wisdom and want to make a Hollywood film.
One of the biggest initial hurdles is that T.E. Lawrence, who had died in a motorcycle accident in 1935, had left the rights to his story to his brother, Professor A.W. Lawrence.
Suddenly, this man who faced death a score of times in Arabia meets a tragic end on a peaceful English country road. On his motorcycle, he collides with a cyclist and is rushed to Bovington Camp Hospital, where after lying for 6 days unconscious, he dies. The crumpled cycle.
A.W. Lawrence eventually negotiated a deal where he had final script approval and allowed the film to be made.
but finally was persuaded to do so by David Lean and with Spiegel helping, provided he had ultimate and total script approval of the script when it was written.
T. Lawrence had written a book, The 7 Pillars of Wisdom, about his time with the Arabs, which the script was based on. Many of the same people had worked on The Bridge on the River Kwai, from producer Sam Spiegel, writer Michael Wilson, actors Alec Guinness and Jack Hawkins, were hired to be part of the Lawrence of Arabia shoot. The starring role, originally intended to be played by Marlon Brando, was played by Peter O'Toole in one of the most legendary performances in British film history.
I remember 2 things I'd read. One, Graves told me that Lawrence apparently never looked at anybody. He made a sort of inventory of everyone's clothes. But Kennington, the sculptor who sculpted him a lot and did all the illustrations for 7 Pillars, said this remarkable thing which I'd never understood before, which was that Lawrence reminded him of a middleweight boxer.
Most of the Arab characters, from Alec Guinness's Prince Faisal to Anthony Quinn's Auda Abu Taib, were played by non-Arab, non-Middle Eastern actors.
You know, of course, that we are destroying the Turkish railways.
I do, sir. Major Lawrence is in charge of all this, is he?
Now, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
Well, your people do think very highly of Major Lawrence, though.
Well, of course I know him. He's me.
The one important character played by a Middle Eastern actor in the film was Sharif Ali. This was a composite character that was played by Egyptian actor Omar Sharif.
Because they did not ever conceive of actually thinking, is there an Arab who could play this Arab?
On the British side, Claude Rains, known for the Invisible Man and the conniving Captain Renaud in Casablanca, played Mr. Dryden of the Arab Bureau, another conniving, dishonest character. And Jack Hawkins played the General Edmund Allenby. The filming took place in Jordan and Syria. Over 1,000 people between the crew and cast helped out with the desert shoot. The sweeping desert, brilliant sky, and endless desolate space could have only worked with the real locations. The film, an almost 4-hour-long brilliant spectacle, details largely the Battle of Aqaba, a seemingly impossible undertaking done by Lawrence and the Hashemites behind the back of his commanders, and the taking of Damascus and setting up of the Arab National Council. So much of the legend of T.E. Lawrence is still debated to this day, in a way which seems almost impossible in the modern age. Lawrence's sexuality is a big one. It has long been debated whether he was gay or asexual, including the possibility hinted at in the film that he was raped by Ottoman soldiers during the war, as well as the issue of identity, with Lawrence caught in between a newfound loyalty to the pan-Arab nationalist cause and his identity as a British military officer at a time when the British were scheming to divide up the Middle East.
We do not work this thing for Faisal.
No. For the English, then?
For the Arabs.
The Arabs. The Hawitat, Ajili, Rala, Beni Sakhr, these I know. I have even heard of the Harith. But the Arabs? What tribe is that?
Lawrence seems to not fit in anywhere, and this is without the fact that he's a child born out of wedlock to a British noble father and thus could not inherit his title. The film itself also deals with the various versions of Lawrence's character.
Yes, it was my privilege to know him and to make him known to the world. He was a poet, a scholar, and a mighty warrior.
Thank you.
He was also the most shameless exhibitionist since Barnum and Bailey.
Was he an earnest, heroic pan-Arabist? A shameless, intriguing exhibitionist? These questions are debated from the beginning when you see him die in a motorcycle accident. During the shoot in the desert, Peter O'Toole broke his thumb and hurt his hand when he punched through a window while drunk, dislocated his spine, fractured his skull, was bitten by a camel, tore his groin muscle, and was almost killed being thrown by a camel during the shoot. Lawrence of Arabia stands out as one of the most impressive, spectacular, and technically masterful cinematic achievements in history. It won Best Picture and Best Director, Best Color Cinematography, Best Sound, Best Original Score, Best Art Direction at the 1963 Oscars. Unfortunately, Peter O'Toole did not win Best Actor, as that was the year Gregory Peck would be honored as Atticus Finch. Tonight's show is brought to you by Yabiga. A Balkan Rakia spirit, go to yabiga.com to order a bottle tonight. Anyway, before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Also, we are now monetized, so if you have any pressing questions during this live stream, send us a super chat, which helps me keep the show running, and which I am obligated by international law, human rights law, to answer. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/movie night extra. All of our after parties are on there forever. We also have a new Discord and a Letterboxd HQ account, so those are 2 more places to follow along with us. Links are in the description. Okay, let me introduce the panel. Conan Neutron, host of Protonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends has a new split LP with Lung, Adult Prom, available now on Bandcamp. J. Andrew World, illustrator, book cover artist, artist for Gives Them an Argument, co-host for Movie Night Extravaganza, and Bad Takes. Christina Oakes, This Barbie is streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/cosmopolitics, Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Cosmopolitics. Send her some subs on Twitch. Djene Bajalan is a Middle Eastern historian and history professor at Missouri State University and has been a contributor to Jacobin and a co-host on This Is Revolution. I, of course, am Forrest Miller, host of 200 episodes. That's right, tonight, Movie Night Extravaganza has hit 200, and we're taking no prisoners. No prisoners.
The part of Christina Oakes will be played by Paul Stanley tonight. So there you go. Gene, welcome back.
We had to kick her off the show because there's no women in this movie.
No dudes allowed for Lawrence Arabia. Not a woman to be found in the movie or on the panel.
Not in the desert, my friends. Well, it's nice to be back. It's nice to be back. Thanks for inviting me on to talk about Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, the last time we had you on was for Dune.
A different Sandy movie, yeah.
Yeah. Well, a Sandy movie, very much inspired by
the original Sandy movie. And obviously, if you watch Dune, not so much the David Lynch one, but the Denis Villeneuve one, has definitely got that Lawrence of Arabia vibe to it. I think a lot of movies since Lawrence of Arabia have been trying to catch that Lawrence of Arabia vibe, because whatever you say about the movie, it is a spectacle that one rarely sees in cinema. It just looks good. The lighting is good. The atmosphere is good. It's a engaging story. It's top-notch acting. It's just a well put together movie. Content-wise, obviously there's quote-unquote problematic issues with it, but as a movie, as a work of art, I really don't have much to complain about that. And I think there's a whole genre of British historical movies from the 60s to the late 70s, which have a kind of Lawrence of Arabia vibe to them. Zulu comes to mind, Khartoum, another sandy desert movie to watch. And then even when you get to quite different topics like the Cromwell movie from the 70s, there's kind of gravitas around the historical movie, and I think Lawrence of Arabia really set the tone for that.
Well, and this is only a couple years after Exodus, right? The movie about the founding of Israel that makes Israel look really cool because Paul Newman's in it. And so this is the desert epic, right? Is a thing that is very much on the minds of people during this time. I mean, whether it's revisionist, every single one of these stories are revisionist or not.
Well, it's also not explicitly hey, isn't colonialism great? There are questions around it as well. Now, I mean, that said, it's not exactly, hey, isn't colonialism maybe not great either? But I think none of it works if it isn't as beautiful of a film as it is. I mean, this is a freaking cool looking film.
It's the overall message. Colonialism could have been a lot cooler if you let the quirked up white boy with the Saudi Arabian fucking garb, run everything.
Just let him.
I need to step in here. Not Saudi Arabian, Hashemites. Saudis emerged in the 1920s from the deep desert to stab the Hashemites in the back and steal all their kingdom.
Well, there's the whole thing with Faisal, right? Prince Faisal's the character throughout this, and they throw him into Iraq. He ends up being the Prince of Iraq which
he
is
he gets fired, but he gets the consolation prize of Iraq, and his relative gets Jordan, which turned out to be the good one to get if you were a Hashemite.
Right. Also, got to call out Faisal Alec Guinness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like also good performance. What accent exactly was he doing? Like what was?
Oh, all right. So I know this. So
Okay.
Omar Sharif, the one guy that's the Egyptian on the shoot, right?
Yeah.
That's like a main character. He did like Alec Guinness copied his voice that he did in in prep school because he was
Okay.
sent to Europe and Britain for prep school and was taught in like British school. So he had like a very specific, distinct way of speaking that was like somewhere between an Egyptian accent and a British accent. And so Alec Guinness, I guess, met with him for like 4 hours and just copied the accent that he used in prep school.
Fantastic. All right. Well,
yeah,
that at least explains that.
Well, like Omar Sharif said, he did it really well. Like,
okay,
I don't.
Right. I mean, it's unique for sure, and it's something where that part doesn't bother me, and I mean, and the titular character too. I mean, Peter O'Toole's depiction. There's something kind of like off by him, which I guess people are taking as queer coded now, at least on the internet. But it's not a very macho character portrayal.
Kind of a but it's not like I don't even know if queer code is the word. He's kind of a like quirky isn't the word either. He's kind of like a like an almost like fairy like creature. Like he's like a he's a manic pixie. That's what he is. That's
manic pixie dream Lawrence.
Dream boy. dream white boy.
Well, he's
but
a kind of
not a bad way,
He's an outcast in British society.
Right. So that's
Lawrence
what makes
an outcast. And what do you do when you're an outcast? Go do stuff in the empire where God doesn't look.
Right.
And he's in the Arab Bureau, bored as the war takes place. And there's a big fight between the India office and the Arab office in Cairo over who should be kind of directing the war, because at this point it's the Indian army that's deployed to Mesopotamia, and then obviously the Egyptians Egypt, which is up until 1914 technically part of the Ottoman Empire, but is effectively under British occupation. There's an assault by the Ottomans across the Sinai in order to seize the Suez Canal and cut the lifeblood. And so it's in the conflict. It's in the context of a bureaucratic rivalry within the apparatus of the British Empire, with these competing sort of centers of colonial administration. And then, of course, you have the Ottomans and their German allies attempting to, kind of launch these assaults across. I mean, the biggest Turkish assault is actually against the Russians, but there's this assault towards the Suez Canal, and it's in this context the British are looking for ways to stir up trouble in the Ottoman Empire, and Faisal and his guys, they've had a spicy relationship with not with the Sultan, but with the constitutional government that's established in the Ottoman Empire in 1908. And eventually they sign on with the British, and we have, the famous McMahon Faisal correspondence where you have this promise of an Arab state. And, Lawrence just goes out there and, we have the Lawrence of Arabia myth, coming into being. And it was a powerful myth. The Japanese military officer who launched a similar operation in Manchuria in the 1930s called himself Lawrence of Manchuria.
Well, and that ties into that
movie,
that Arthur Kennedy character, right? Who is the Jackson Bentley, who's he came to prominence because he was in Death of a Salesman, the Kazan movie.
Yeah.
But like the myth making, right? Of like seeing that aspect of it, and seeing Lawrence kind of sort of getting high in his own supply after a little while, and kind of buying into it a little bit, and being, the myth making that we think of as commonplace now, but at the time, like he literally says, I want to turn him into a symbol, and it's interesting that like that became kind of like a template almost.
And I like how like they portray like the competing interests, right? Like the Bentley character is obviously like, admits right off the bat to Faisal, like, yeah, I'm trying to get the Americans to come into the war by creating like a cool guy in the desert to be like
He's wagging the dog
yeah,
is
yeah.
what he's trying to do. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and you know, it took a really long time to convince because, like, you know, in 1914, Woodrow Wilson had run on like the "He kept us out of war" slogan, so it was really hard to bring like the Americans into war. And then there's also the idea that, you know, everybody kind of in the Arab Bureau hates the fact that they're not on the Western Front, and they're kind of relegated to like the colonial, like, you know, saving the colonial apparatus, which, you know, they talk about in this. The Suez Canal is like the one thing they really care about. They're like, oh yeah, we got to protect that because we got to get, you know, shipping, but like we
it's
really
for utility and shipping, which remember when that boat got stuck in it, right? It's still true.
Well, I mean, right now you have you know, the Houthi blocking access to places like the Suez Canal, and you have like literally people freaking out, like Biden sending missile strikes in there because, you know, the 12% of our shipping still goes through the Suez Canal globally. Like, it's you know, an all important thing that the British would have done pretty much anything to protect. Like,
I just think that container ship getting stuck in there in 2021 is funnier.
Yeah, no, it was very funny.
And what would be even funnier is if the one after it, whoops, I got stuck too. You know, but didn't happen. No, but I think that ties into, I think one of the coolest shots is when you see when they go into the canal and you see kind of the boat sort of behind the sand dunes. It's such a cool, evocative image.
Especially after, you know, the sad that's like after the quicksand moment where it's like, you know, you've literally just seen a kid get swallowed up by quicksand, which he says, I got that kid killed. You didn't really. The quicksand got that kid killed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't attach that to your body count.
And I mean, you know, growing up in the 80s, Conan can attest to this. Like I thought quicksand was going to be a major part of my adult life, that I have to avoid it at all costs. And somehow it's just never been an issue as a grown up. Maybe I'm not living right.
I like how word for word you also said this the last episode.
Well, it's Adventure Month. He's allowed, you know. But it was really in 1980s cinema and television. It was like you thought it was quicksand around every corner. Yeah, it's true. He carries the burden with those two kids originally. Like, he carries that like very heavily and blames himself for it. And it's interesting. Like, there's some pretty stone cold murdering that goes on in here. In this film, as there was in the actual conflict, I'm sure. I haven't read what's the book, the
Seven Pillars of Wisdom.
7 Pillars of. I haven't read that.
I actually used it in my PhD, actually, because he writes a bit about Kurds and Kurdish tribes. So
nice.
But he was part of this kind of adventure set as well. You know, there's also Gertrude Bell, because I think they made a movie about her recently, who was another kind of Lawrence of Arabia type character, a British adventurer, an outcast because she's a woman, obviously, in a very male-dominated profession.
That was Herzog, right? Like, and
Herzog made it,
yeah.
Werner Herzog made that movie. I despise Gertrude Bell. She terrible lady. She insulted my grandfather, and one of my cool things I discovered about Gertrude Bell is in the British archives. When I was doing my research, I discovered that she'd got robbed by a bunch of Kurds outside of Diyarbakir, and she had to make an insurance claim. And I found the insurance documents there. Like, that probably explains why she ended up being pro-Arab and anti-Kurd. Was probably all down to that like robbery in 1910 or something like that. But you know, there was a lot of these kind of adventuring agents, not just Brits, obviously, going around the Middle East doing archaeology. Lawrence of Arabia did a bit of archaeology. It was a time when people did proper imperial training, right? Nowadays, the best the United States can muscle up are Mormons. And
missionary work,
yeah. Back in the day,
they said, I mean, it was both Gertrude Bell and Lawrence, like 4 different things, right? Like, they'd send them in there, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, we're doing like an archaeology dig or whatever," but they'd actually be mapping out where all like the resources.
Yeah, they're basically noting down all of the tribes and making connections with local leaders. But you know, these places weren't, you know, terra incognito for people in the early 20th century. Europeans have been going around there for like a century. British Anglo-Persian oil was lurking around the borders of Iraq at this time. Lawrence, I actually used to call myself Lawrence of Missouri, coming out here to meet the meet the savages of the Ozarks region.
Yeah, but I thought in Springfield you'd have to like paint yourself yellow and get bug eyes and have only 3 fingers to be able to.
That's Joplin, buddy. That's Joplin. You know, Springfield's the big city. But yeah, you have this. Lawrence is a kind of interesting character who wrote, who had a media presence at the time.
Yeah.
And his legend, it was a real, it wasn't something that was created by the movie, but certainly it's been sustained by the movie, because when you think of Lawrence of Arabia, you're not thinking of Lawrence of Arabia, you're thinking of the movie.
You're thinking of Peter O'Toole and like the sweeping vistas, and
that's what you're thinking about when you think of Lawrence of Arabia. So the movie kind of extended that legend because without the movie, I suspect Lawrence would be a far more obscure.
At least in America, right?
He would be, even in America, he would be like, I don't know, he'd be someone like, if you kind of knew a bit about history or you liked adventurers and stuff, you'd know about, but he wouldn't be the household name that he is today. But of course, there is a kind of insidious message to this movie, which is that Lawrence is going to savages, right? These are like desert dwelling savages, completely ignoring, a century of Ottoman modernization and the fact that, a lot of people joining the Arab revolt were disaffected military officers. The second thing, who had served in the Ottoman army, trained by Germans, educated in, if not in Europe, but in European language schools. This was a period where everybody was being, talking about constitutionalism and liberal political values. And the image you get from the movie, it's that Lawrence is coming and like awakening these people to their true national identity, when in fact, the reality was, for example, most Arabs remained loyal to the Ottoman military, and this wasn't a mass movement. This was largely disaffected tribes and a bunch of pissed off military officers who
and you get when they're mapping the world out, like after this, right? Like it's the British and the French who don't really know that much about anything, right? Like they're not trying to pay attention to the various distinctions between the tribes. You have very modern cities, and then you have the British going, yeah, but like we like the Bedouin, like we like Bedouin leaders that we kind of just found in the desert more than we like the more modern citizenry of all these countries that have their own identities already, that have their own allegiances to the Ottomans already. We can't really control those people though, because they're just people. So we're gonna take.
This is literally how. There's a great book by Toby Dodge called "Inventing Iraq," which really lays out what you've just said. Like, the British came to the Middle East. They certainly had knowledge, in a sense, like at least when compared to when, let's say, the Americans turn up in the Middle East, right? The British had a long history of diplomatic interaction with the region, agents and spies, missionaries. All these people have been traveling the regions. There was information out there, but of course, that information was skewed through that particular prejudices as 19th century British people and imperialists. And so, as you said, amongst the British officials, especially in Iraq, there was this mythology around the Bedouin being these free, people, and some misunderstandings of Bedouin life basically led the British to empower a whole bunch of kind of con men in rural parts of the Middle East. Basically,
as Americans are still doing in the Middle East,
pretty much still what Americans doing.
Yeah,
and then disempowering the urban elites, which they saw as oriental and corrupt, when those were the kind of nucleuses of modern bourgeois society, where you had civil society. People followed the news. People followed world events. People, even if people weren't literate, people would sit in cafes and listen to someone read the newspaper to them and things like that. So these were societies in the kind of throes of modernization. And what happens with the Arab revolt in the end and the partition of the Ottoman Empire is a lot of this kind of modernization is there's a kind of brakes put on it. There's kind of things jammed in the wheels, and the British and French, based on their own prejudices of Middle Eastern societies being pre-modern savages. You see the image in this movie where we don't really see the Sharifian officers. We just see a bunch of tribal leaders. And even when we talk about tribal leaders in the 19th century weren't living on the moon, right? Like tribal leaders were themselves changed by the processes of modernization, right? They would become landowners in ways that they weren't landowners before. They would use modern politics and civil society and influence in ways that tribal leaders, 300 years ago would have done. So these so-called traditional kind of communities themselves were often transformed in the process of modernization. Lawrence of Arabia presents the story of Arab liberation as being Lawrence turns up and helps a few forward-thinking leaders to lead the Arabs to Damascus, only for them to just like start fighting with each other and ruin their opportunity. And the British government, which is a complete it's a completely perverse narration of what happened at the end of the Arab Revolt. There's an excellent new book, I don't know when it was published, a couple of years ago, called How the West Stole Democracy from the Arabs by Elizabeth Thompson. And, this is a book that is detailing actually what really happened was that Faisal and his guys got to Damascus. They attempted to establish a constitutional government. One thing I disagree with Thompson on this, says it's the first constitutional government with full equality in the Arab world. Well, the Ottoman Empire was in the Arab world, and they had a constitution as early as 1876. But it was a period when you had Islamic reformers, secular Arab nationalists coming together to try and build a kind of constitutional regime. Would it have been perfect? Would it have been a utopia? No, but it's probably better than what happened once the Europeans arrived, because what we see, as I said, with the British, you see the kind of beggaring. After booting him out of Damascus, Faisal gets shipped off as a consolation prize to being king of Iraq, and he wasn't a great king. He wasn't that good. He was kind of hampered. I heard a rumor that I don't know if it's true, but I was told it by a pro-Hashemite Iraqi diplomat who I know, that apparently King Faisal was crowned on his throne was actually just boxes of Asahi beer. So
sounds like fun.
And he had a palace in my family's hometown as well. So he had a little winter palace there. But in Iraq you have this society which the British divide up into tribes and really maintain these kind of differences in the society. And the French, they even go even crazier. Like there's a Druze region. They create Lebanon as a Christian majority region. They split up Aleppo from Damascus, and try and do this divide and conquer. So the Europeans come in, and it's not that the social cleavages and religious cleavages that existed in the Middle East didn't exist before the Europeans turned up, right? Like the Europeans didn't invent these things, right. But a lot of these sectarian differences and tribalism and things, those were reified by colonial policies. They were given a new lease of life. So the great historian of Iraq, Hanan Battuta, he talks about, prior to the British, there's a process of detribalization as people begin to move to the cities and like experience modernity. And this is reversed during the colonial period. So colonialism brings barbarism. And what we're presented in Lawrence of Arabia is a picture, the quintessential white savior, although, right.
Colonialism as a cure to barbarism instead.
Yeah, the enlightened colonialist. It's a colonialism that can critique itself.
Yeah.
In a sense, it can critique the bumbling bureaucrats who don't really get the pulse of the people on the ground. But in the end, the colonialism is a redeeming quality. Is a redeemable quality.
Well, and you get it like to the point where it's a bit much, where you have Lawrence getting shot in the arm and then putting his hand on the wound for a second and literally having a stigmata and standing on above everybody on the on like the derailed train, and it's both a portrait of his own egoism, but also kind of how he's portrayed within the movies in the context of bringing the Arabs to Damascus. Like it's kind of this almost biblical,
pseudo-religious,
like, yeah.
biblical. But think about it this way. So they tried to make this film 9 years earlier, and there were some significant changes to the earlier version, not the least of which is John Wayne was going to play Lawrence.
No.
True.
I'm here to save Arabia, pilgrims.
So if anybody is thinking that it seems sus with the Muad'Dib here, Peter O'Toole, in that role. Can you imagine if it was John freaking Wayne? I mean, like that's
he played Genghis Khan, so I think he has the range to do it.
He would just keep killing Arabs and be like, "What? They're indigenous. I can't stop myself."
But I think it's notable too because I'm curious the real Lawrence, real T. Lawrence versus the Peter O'Toole depiction, because there is something kind of fascinating about this character in the fact that, again, there's I was calling it getting high in his own supply, right, during the course of the story as he gradually becomes more confident.
I should preface this by saying that I am not a Lawrence of Arabia aficionado or scholar,
sure,
by any means, although I've read his writings. So for example, his his writings on the tribes, on the Kurdish tribes specifically, which is actually the section I studied the most of his. And interestingly enough, his archive is also held in my hometown of Hull for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah. There's an archive center there, so it's in my hometown. Anyway, so his Lawrence of Arabia's writings demonstrate a knowledge of the society, right? He's not, it's not Thomas Friedman level, like he speaks to a taxi driver in broken Arabic and you think, no, he's a guy. And think about the time he's doing, like he's living. If you wanted to travel out in the Middle East, there's still, the Berlin-Baghdad Railway is still under construction, so there's no trains all the way. You have the Hijaz Railway, the one, interestingly enough, the railway that they blow up is the Hijaz Railway, which was an interesting project. It was a railway built to connect Damascus to the Hijaz for the sake of the pilgrimage. And it was a huge cause celeb around the world because, a lot of the railway concessions in the Ottoman Empire were granted to foreign companies. But this railway was built not with entirely with Ottoman capital, but through subscriptions from around the Islamic world. It was a huge pan-Islamic project. It was a huge point of pride, not just for Ottomans, but for the entire Islamic world, because it was a demonstration that the power of Islam could, bring this modernization project. So like this railway was an important bloody railway, like not just physically, was symbolically a huge, had been seen or at least presented as this huge achievement for Islamic civilization, built not by one country, but by the entire Islamic world to service this important, I don't know where the fuck I was going with this, but what I'm saying is that to travel around these regions, Lawrence of Arabia, he had to get by. He didn't have a bloody phone. There weren't like easy tourist services. His contacts in local towns would be local missionaries who'd been down. A lot of Americans, actually, tons of Americans out there. In fact, the American missionaries are probably better than the entire U.S. Foreign Office, State Department these days, because when you fly out to be the mission, the vice consul in Bitlis in 1910, you aren't like getting on an airplane back for the weekend in Paris. You're out there for like 2 years, right?
Right.
drinking the water, eating the food. So Lawrence of Arabia was operating in the Middle East where to get around, you would have to develop some kind of local knowledge and understandings. But of course, he has his own prejudices, and also the informants from whom he gets information are also able to shape and manipulate his perceptions of particular communities there. And there's a lot of guys like Lawrence of Arabia. There's a guy called Major Sohn who has a book called Through Mesopotamia and Kurdistan in Disguise. And he was a important officer. I think he was in Iran during the First World War. But before the First World War, he has a similar type of story to Lawrence of Arabia, except it's not happening at wartime, where he basically he nearly gets arrested because his Persian is so good that they say, you're not really British, you're actually a Persian constitutionalist trying to get out of, and he's like, no, I really am British. But he doesn't have any bloody papers to prove it. They're just saying there's some freaking Persian constitutionalist revolutionary who's doing this. And, he ends up, serving a powerful Kurdish tribal leader as his secretary for a while. And his accent, he has a kind of weird accent in Kurdish, and he goes, it's because I'm from Azerbaijan. And then he gets caught because he says the wrong thing the wrong day, and they work out. So, there's a lot of these adventure dudes who go out there and get to know the culture with all their prejudices going into it. But having prejudices doesn't necessarily mean you don't have some deep understanding of a culture, right? In fact, some of the most dangerous people, when it comes to committing genocide against Native Americans, have deep, intimate knowledge of Native American society.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, Andrew
that's what
Jackson
that whole
kept,
Flower Moon movie is all about, isn't it? I haven't seen it, but I'm
I'm about to watch that. I'm about to watch it this week. But Andrew Jackson adopted, I think, 3 Native American kids. That's an example of somebody who ended up being kind of deeply and was given a Native American title. As someone who was probably one of the most genocidal presidents we've had in terms of Native Americans, and he kind of. Which is a topic I wanted to bring up.
Before you do that, the next episode we're doing is Killers of the Flower Moon, and Robert De Niro is with the Osage, and it's actually very timely for you to bring that up because again, it's literally the next episode that we're doing, so that's going to start the month of coverage.
My point is, when we talk about Lawrence of Arabia and his generation of people, they were knowledgeable of these societies.
It's not that they thought that here be dragons on the map necessarily.
Exactly. they had knowledge of these societies.
Here be Arabs.
They had deep prejudices, right? For example, they were often prejudiced against saying these people calling for a constitution in Iran and the Ottoman Empire, they're just secretly, they're just a licentious mob who wants to be corrupt but they need a strong, firm hand of a sultan to keep him in order. You would have these kind of prejudiced beliefs that, and of course, that is ultimately the argument that is put forward to impose colonial rule on the Arabs following the First World War. The Arabs are recognized as a nation on one hand, but at the same time, they're recognized as being a primitive nation and one in need of a colonial guide to
a gentle hand.
And you have this thing called the mandate system developed after the First World War, which is this curious compromise between the principle of national self-determination and colonialism, where it's we're going to set up a colonial regime, but don't worry, guys, we're here to help you join the League of Nations.
That's like the Wilsonian thing where it's we'll bring everybody into the League of Nations, but if you're not white, you're kind of mandate. You know what I mean?
You get, and they even had A mandates, B, if you're a bloody Polynesian, you're down in the C mandates. They're just gonna C mandate you. And
so I had a before we move too far off this, I was thinking about the concept in this of going native. You know what I mean? Because they ask at one point in this,
have you gone native?
Yeah. And so the original person that was like supposed to play besides John Wayne, which would have been the worst for
insane. Yeah, I mean, like it ruins his. And honestly, Alec Guinness actually wanted to play Lawrence, but they thought he was too
That's
old.
a name I have not heard in a long time. Anyway, so
that was an earlier version too, but
the,
they were
the
probably
other
right.
original person, Marlon Brando, and I feel like you know, a very
Brando probably
interesting-
could have pulled it off. He probably could have pulled it off.
Yeah, no, for
John
sure.
Wayne
You know,
probably
but-
not.
And we,
but
and
like,
we would all be. John Wayne probably would not have pulled it off to the same degree. Brando, if he'd been in it, we'd be talking about how this was Brando's best freaking piece.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, so but like looking at something like Apocalypse Now, that is Brando's you know, thing of going native, pretty much, right? Like his Colonel Kurtz is
That's true.
like joining the enemy side and going native, pretty much, and creating his own mini fucking empire on like the shores of Vietnam. That's actually Bong Bong Marcos's Philippines, for, you know, whatever. But I don't know why I like saying that name.
You could hit Bong Bong.
Because it sounds like the Wu-Tang Clan is making a nickname for him. Is what it sounds like.
But it comes down to this. It's like, the whole going native thing is. It's more just about British culture, isn't it? Really, some people do go. You never want to go full dances with wolves, but some people do go dances with wolves. Some people just enjoy it as a kind of liberatory experience to escape especially for middle and upper class British people. It's quite a stifling society. We're coming out, tired of being what probably was, probably was. This was like a method of adventure, for people.
He's like, oh my God, I'm so sick of being British.
I'm so sick of living here.
We're sick of it too. By the way, all love for Wu-Tang Clan. I don't mean that as an insult, of course. Just so you know. It's funny. I recently, actually this month, also saw Life and Times of Colonel Blimp, which is another Powell and Pressburger movie, and something of a lampoon of a British military culture, but at the same time, like a very powerful, like anti-war movie. And it's interesting to me that how had a hard time being out in the world because it was considered too subversive in that way. Whereas I feel like there's a lot of things in Lawrence that it gets away with being kind of subversive, but you kind of have to like think about it a little bit. I mean, I'm thinking about like that in scene where Faisal and all them are, was it the young men make wars and the virtues of war, the virtues of young men, courage and hope for the future. Then old men make the peace, and the vices of peace are the vices of old men. It just reminds me of like, Godfather, where they close the door on her at like at the end of the first movie, or even in Oppenheimer, using a more recent example where they got their bomb. They don't need your ass anymore. They're gonna go divide this up now. It's like, thanks.
And you have no.
I dropped the bomb. I dropped the bomb.
Tell me your story walking.
In Nagasaki and Hiroshima, do you think they give a fuck about who built the bomb?
Gary Oldman.
I want to.
I
like imagining Gary Oldman going native, and his version of that is that he's in like Kansas City. He's like selling hats in Kansas City, and he's like,
he practically.
I'm gonna pop on down to Joplin, and I'm gonna have myself a good old time with the boys. A lot of Negroes down there, but we know how to keep them boys in check.
Which he did the opposite of that in True Romance.
Exactly. To get a vacation down in the Ozarks is going to be a whole thing.
Cut his heart out with a spoon.
But you know what I mean when I say that, where it's just like there's these moments they happen in real life too, but when they're depicted in film, especially after an epic as long as this, where Lawrence wants to stay involved, and it's like, no, this is not your thing anymore,
It's
man.
above his pay grade. It's above his pay grade. This is like, it's way above his pay grade. And the British are like making an absolute, like, there's all these agreements. Often the British policy during the First World War is portrayed as being this kind of like super devious, like deliberately premeditated attempt to trick the Arabs. When in fact, the reality is like the British are like really distracted in other places, and they're making all kinds of fucking promises to deal with these this war, right?
Yeah,
We've got promises being made to the Arabs, promises being made to the Zionist movement, and of course, promises being made to the French. And in the hierarchy of promises, the Arabs did not do well.
Don't look at the comments while you're talking ever. It's the worst idea.
I know about the comment. I mean, you guys have seen TIR. Our comment section is wild.
Just
we had to take it off the screen.
Yeah,
because it nearly gave Pascal a heart attack.
No, but I think all those are great points. I mean, and it's notable too that they're dividing up, right? Of course. What else do you do after you win? And there's a back and forth. Nobody's happy, so therefore it's a compromise.
Yeah.
Which is great considering like the historical era that this is in and everything that comes after, right? It's like no one's happy. Cool.
The one thing is, the concept of like interest, right? Like the one thing that really is motivating stuff, I think, after the war very fast is like the oil. Like, we can strike, like there's a desert and we can strike oil in that desert. And I don't necessarily think that that's motivating things as the war is going on. But the second the war ends, you definitely...
Yeah, it becomes a fact that, imperial policy is, sometimes it can be quite premeditated, but especially in big empires, there's often a lot of moving parts moving against each other. Sometimes moving in completely different directions than where they want to go. So, of course, at the end of the war, it's actually the British who overpromised to everybody at the end of the war, and the Arabs kind of get shafted. So it kind of sucks for them. And the Arabs got shafted. Kurds got shafted even worse than the Arabs.
Right.
And the Arabs got shafted, except for the Palestinians, who obviously got extra shafted. And so, you have this whole Middle East, like, put it this way, Lawrence of Arabia is a movie that's depicting the historical moment where a lot of the nonsense taking place in the Middle East today, at least in the form that it's taking, got set on that track.
Absolutely.
As it were.
And it's the concept of like world war. Like, of course, I mean, like by the time World War II comes around, obviously there's a little bit more like, okay, maybe we have to figure out like a new world order to kind of or like an international order to kind of fix things. That was not, things were just kind of moving during World War One, like in real time. And it's like nobody was really, I mean, like you have kind of Wilson coming in as like person at the end of the war that's like, well, maybe we should set up some kind of, like league. But like during the war, everyone's just kind of like,
Woodrow Wilson, we can contemn his globalism while still celebrating his strong domestic tradition of white supremacy.
He's the birth of a nation president. He did so much.
But he wasn't good. He was a good liberal internationalist.
He did so much for cinema. He had the first screening of a big movie in the White House. It was Birth of a Nation.
Word, we're gonna get ourselves a movie in the White House tonight. And it's a stern historical era. Got some fine young gentlemen and their defense of the United States of America against the crime of miscegenation. Which apparently the New York Times is publishing anti-miscegenation articles these days.
Oh.
Well, apparently this week also I saw a David Frum article in the Atlantic that's like, we need to uncancel Woodrow Wilson. Which, bitch, who can't, like, what do you mean cancel? What does that entail when it's
bringing him back for life? That's what it is.
They're making Woodrow Wilson woke. Yes.
Yeah.
Woke Wilson.
People are talking about it more and more.
Ironically, you have like Wilson being like, the big white supremacist president, Calvin Coolidge, who gets put in there with like Reagan. I mean, pretty much like, as his like ideology. He was the first woke president. He was the guy that's like, hey, maybe let's not be so mean to the black people in DC. Like we should use their pronouns or whatever.
Can you imagine woke Woodrow Wilson? Now today I'm here to talk to you fine gentlemen about the struggles that independent black women suffer in the workplace and the intolerable travails they face due to structural racism and hair discrimination. Like this
He's
is
like,
gonna be
he's like, and I should know about structural racism. I helped create it, and I'm here to. He's doing the Joe Biden. I helped create it, and I'm here to dismantle it, and then doesn't.
I'm here to dismantle. Yeah, he's here to. That's another. I'm gonna have to tell Jason we've got a new because we've already come up with several new ideologies on TIR. We have Calhounism, Leninism, and Jefferson, Pol Pot, Jefferson Davis thought.
There you go.
Wow.
Because whatever you say about the Confederate States of America, whatever you say about them, at least they fought the Yankee imperialists.
I was gonna say it isn't like Pol Pot fucking isn't that just what it already was, like kind of basically like a new version of the Confederacy.
Pol Pot, yeah, maybe that's what we need. That's what we need.
They're fighting the Vietnamese Yankees, you know.
Exactly.
All right, not to derail us and put us back onto the movie we're covering, but
I have a clip. I have a clip to get us back.
Okay,
to the movie
cool.
we're covering.
I was gonna say because as entertaining as it is, it's a totally different show.
Yeah, this is revolution. You know, it's the side. It's the
Tune in for that. For Woodrow Wilson.
His approach had been Lawrence, which of the many interpretations he'd adopted. He talked with Kenneth Griffith, the actor, and a friend of O'Toole's on the balcony of his Almeria villa.
I hate to define, particularly when I'm working on a character, because I find this embalms him, and he becomes an immortal rather than a living thing. I came to it by a great deal of research, and study, but without any conscious. I mean, I'm taken to task a lot about this, that I should synthesize, but I won't, and I can't. I'll give an example of how I came to it. I remember sitting in a black tent in a place called El Jaffa, and we were talking about Lawrence to a lot of Arabs. And someone said, "Oh, Abdi would know better," and they shouted for this man. And in clanked a huge Sudanese gentleman of about 80. And he was a slave, a now freed slave, whom Aoud Abu Tai, who was one of Lawrence's chief warriors, gave to Lawrence to look after him. And someone said, "What did Lawrence look like?" He pointed at me and said, "Him." Well, needless to say, I grabbed him and we talked and talked and talked. He worked on the picture. He made the coffee, in fact. And one day I was playing a scene and he said, I was talking to someone and being rather remote and looking all over the place, and he said, "A battle, a hero, doesn't look here or there or up or down. He gives someone the plane of his face." I remember two things I'd read. One, Graves told me that Lawrence apparently never looked at anybody. He made a sort of inventory of everyone's clothes. But Kennington, the sculptor who sculpted him a lot and did all the illustrations for Seven Pillars, said this remarkable thing which I'd never understood before, which was that Lawrence reminded him of a middleweight boxer. And at that moment, something very important clicked. And I knew exactly what Abdi meant by the plane of his face, which was this. And the eyes didn't travel over the clothes, but they were aware of the hands and aware of everything that was going on. And it was at once withdrawn, as a boxer must be, and at the same time very penetrating. And this one physical thing really clicked, and it made a whole difference to the way I played it. Now, this is the way I work. I can't work with it. It's not an exact science to me.
Yes. What about his height, Peter? He was a very short man, and you're a very tall man. Do you make any effort as an actor to think like a small man?
No. I've always said when anyone asks me about Lawrence's inches, I always say it's a question for his tailor, not his interpreter, and that's probably a bit flip. But there's nothing I can do. I don't think it's really all that important anyway. And I'm certainly sure he never thought I was a small man.
Yeah.
And I happen to be 8'5", as you clearly implied.
Yes.
And I can't chop off my legs and roam around on bloody stumps, so I really have had to disregard.
These experiences that you had from people who knew him and the extraordinary things you've seen, have they in themselves deepened your knowledge of Lawrence?
Oh, yes. The desert, I think, primarily. I remember before I went to the desert, someone told me that, the desert is where God was born. Literally, one is so alone there. And this man told me that the desert, it's so implacable and so indefatigable. There's nothing that a man can do. And that this gives one a kind of peace. And I had thoughts of this very lonely, tormented gentleman, super cerebral old thing that he was, arriving in the desert and finding his peace. Well, I got there, and I found, for my money anyway, that indeed what happens is, it is, as I say, so vast and unremittingly hard that you can't win, and you know you can't win, and then you have a go. And this implies a great deal of strange things, maybe masochistic, which I think he felt.
What about this fetish with cleanliness? You're not all that fussy yourself, so what do you think of this?
Cleanliness is next to godliness, I think. A nice little rule he learned from his very, very strict mum. And also, a psychiatrist told me, it's evidenced in Shakespeare quite a lot, the Scottish play, for instance. Guilt. The hands never come clean and all that. And he loved the desert. He used to say it was clean. It was clean.
What were some of the things that you heard and read that were important to you about deciding you which way you were going to go?
Oh, there's so many, many things. I remember speaking to a sheikh in Amman. The first Arab I met who knew him. And I'd given up asking questions like, what was he like how was it? I used to try sort of tricky things. But I said to him, did he ever tell jokes? At which point he went into a great stream of Arabic with tears trickling down his face, laughing like a drain. Now, I hadn't the faintest idea what he said, but clearly Lawrence had been very, 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 very funny at one point. And I kept on finding more and more evidence of this. He was a great humorist. And one of them told me about the time that he questioned him for hours about the camel grazing in Piccadilly. And Lawrence gave very solemn replies to all this, whether Oxfordshire was a desert country. And then again, on another level, his descriptions of some of the things in Seven Pillars he did, like the killing of a man, the execution of a man. He had to execute him to keep two tribes from warring with each other and would split up a whole thing and ruin the whole venture. So he chose, because he had no tribe, it wouldn't offend anybody, to shoot the man. He describes it very coldly.
Very nice. In the chat, I was reminded Prometheus, the Fassbender character, who bears a striking resemblance to Peter O'Toole. That android character is obsessed with Peter O'Toole in Lawrence of Arabia and like quotes him, and that does like the match thing and all that.
Yeah,
which is just another of the many propagations of media that this has.
And of course, we have to mention Stargate because like there's whole scenes and the orchestral score from the film is heavily lifted from this movie. So, there's your Stargate reference, people. Be happy. Our 200th episode. There you go.
Movie night extravaganza bingo. It wouldn't be the 200th episode if there wasn't a Stargate reference.
Yes.
But Dean, you want to do final thoughts about this?
I mean, Peter O'Toole. They don't make actors like that very often.
Yeah.
A Yorkshireman. Well, effectively a Yorkshireman from Leeds. You can tell he's got a bit of a Leeds accent.
Yorkshire by proxy.
He fractured his spine, fractured his skull, like on the shoot. Like he was like famously like an alcoholic who eventually got sober, like and then a big part of his thing was talking about how he got sober. But like he punched through he got drunk, gambled away all his money that he made on the film during the shoot, punched through a caravan window, broke his hand punching through that caravan window, got thrown off a camel, and then another camel bit him. So he was really living like the Lawrence of Arabia pain level, I guess, throughout this shoot.
The wild man.
Yeah. He went native. He went native.
He went on a bender, basically.
Gene, it's always great to have you on, man. It's
Well, thank you so much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Especially for a momentous 200th episode. We'll have to
Yes,
find another
I'm
movie.
honored for that. You've come a long way.
We'll find another movie set in the desert, and we'll bring you on again.
I'm always here for desert action, but I'm only on for desert movies.
Right?
It's in your maybe we'll finally do Stargate, and we can have you on.
You're our desert movie correspondent.
I'll be the desert movie correspondent.
You kind of are. That's you know what? Yes, that make it so. Absolutely.
We can talk about Dune when it finally drops.
I'm looking forward to it, actually, despite disliking both Timothée and Zendaya. I'm looking forward to it.
You really? You're not a big Chalamet guy.
I'm just getting sick of seeing him. It's like Adam Driver's and everything. It's like Jesus Christ, does
He's
this kid have to be in everything? He's Wonka. Who asked for him to do Wonka?
He was. I think he was like Henry V. I want to say in the movie, or something. And the guy. I think the guy from Twilight was the French king.
That sounds like an actual nightmare to me. But peace and love for people that enjoy that.
Hey, it is a pleasure, guys, and thank you for inviting me, guys.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Take care, brother.
Bye.
There he goes, Djene Bajalan. So yeah, Peter O'Toole's character I forgot all about that. I think it's Prometheus, right? It's not the character's in Covenant as well, but like I think he even quotes some stuff from Lawrence of Arabia on in that film. If I remember
it's
correctly.
Been a while since I've seen it, so
well, because he goes a little Colonel Kurtz too.
Yeah,
right? Spoiler alert to Prometheus, which frankly wasn't that good. So I'm doing
you don't need to watch it, y'all.
By the way, we have a super chat. That's another quote from Lawrence of Arabia. No Arab loves the desert. We love the water and green trees. There's nothing in the desert. No man needs nothing.
That's right. This is a great. This is a very quotable movie. I mean, obviously, it was the one that I threw in. Also about the young men making wars and old men making the peace, but like, it's again doubly hilarious because there's just not a woman to be found with a speaking role in this entire film. Anywhere. but
which if you look into the history of Lawrence of Arabia, I'm not sure he was ever even in the room with a woman.
Yeah, when those nuns show up towards the end, I'm just like, wait, whoa, who brought the dames?
Who are these strange creatures? Yeah, exactly.
It's like when you go to like a party or something, you're like, oh, all right, there's women here now. All right, guys, behave.
Yeah, it's I was realizing I haven't really seen tons of stuff with Peter O'Toole, and when I have, it's been like a ladder. I mean, isn't he in Ratatouille? Like, if I remember correctly, like he's in The Last Emperor. I remember that, which is interesting because that's like what 87, like Bernardo Bertolucci. So he's in there as an older man. Like he's in like a bunch of stuff, but he's always this dude I've been more familiar with than have seen. And I've seen Lawrence of Arabia all the way through one time, which was this week. And the rest of the time it was kind of just permanently on cable for a while. So I would like keep it on for a while because I'm like, oh, this looks amazing. I don't know what the hell's going on, but like this, like it looks amazing. Like the look of it is utterly fantastic. And to the point that they had like lenses that were like, remember we were talking about making larger lenses for bigger shots with Hidden Fortress and using widescreen, right? There's a 482 millimeter lens that they made for the Omar Sharif entrance, like where it looks like a mirage, and it's super far. A lot of people bag on this scene. I'm like, I don't know why you're bagging on it. It's like awesome because you see him come from like super far away and come in, and apparently that was with a special lens made from Panavision, and it's known as like the David Lean lens. So it's created specifically for that shot. Like there's stuff like that in this.
Yeah.
And as fascinating as the actual history is, I think it's notable that like with a lot of these movies, right? That there's certain conventions that were broken. I'm thinking like Fitzcarraldo, Herzog filming A Magic Hour.
By the way, he wasn't Ratatouille.
He wasn't okay. I'm glad that wasn't like a fever dream or Berenstain Bears thing. And then Kurosawa, with the usage of well, they called it Toho Vision, didn't they? But like there are all these technical innovations that really, I mean, they still hold up. You see the restoration of this, and it's like
it's dazzling.
Yeah, like I could see where someone could be like not into the story or maybe not even the runtime, but holy moly, is this a good looking movie? Like it makes you feel like you're in the desert, and that is such a rare thing. And I feel like there's a lot of contemporary filmmakers that can't pull that off with a lot more technology.
Yeah.
But
well, all right. So a couple facts about it. 1,000 people worked on the production of this. In theory,
literal cast of thousands, right?
Yeah. And I guess many of the crew members, because I probably knowing that this, I mean, on top of not wanting to hire even more extras, I guess like knowing that this is going to be like a pretty historical, like epic film. A lot of the crew members are like these like side roles. Like
he wasn't Troy. Yeah, I forgot.
Like one of the cameramen, I think, is the guy that drives the car when he picks up like the kid in Lawrence and is like, oh, you gonna bring him in this, huh? Like that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so that's like one of the crew members. Like all the crew members were playing these like extra parts because they wanted to be. Like, yeah, I mean, this is a cast of thousands. I want to be in this too.
Yeah, might as well. There's a big like left to right movement throughout the whole film too. That I guess was like that was intentional in the filmmaking to make it seem like a journey. Which it's interesting because I didn't think about that until after watching it, but it actually it does feel that way, right? Like in the same way that. We've talked about in the past recently, I think Treasure Share Madre about The Searchers. I think like David
Tarantino.
David Lean was like really into The Searchers, the John Ford movie. Which is sort of like, again, because remember there was that mutual respect society between him and between Ford and Kurosawa.
Yeah.
As well. And so it's just interesting to see like this kind of almost like feedback loop of innovation and taking inspiration and trying to see what where else you can go with it. That like,
which by the way, David Lean listing off his favorite films of all time, Rashomon is one of the first ones on the list.
There you go. So I'll circle back around, but it's at a certain point, like how much bigger can you go?
Also, Jaws is on the list.
How much bigger can you go than Lawrence of Arabia? It's like as big as it's like the epic, right? I mean, like there's earlier stuff like Ben-Hur, sure, and that's fantastic, and it is a cast of thousands as well. But if you're talking about sweeping scope and scale, the type of story that you're telling, like hero's journey, however you want to define it, like. It's still kind of one of the gold standards, right? It has to be
timeless cinematography.
This is and the Bridge on the River Kwai, which is the movie that he and Alec Guinness is obviously stars in it. I think the other Jack, I forget the guy's name, but like the guy that plays General Allenby in this is a main character in Bridge on the River Kwai. Sam Spiegel, who's the producer of this, is the producer. So like. They had just
Jack Hawkins.
So they had just come out of this massive success, which Bridge on the River Kwai,
which is great. That's a great film.
Yeah, but it made something crazy like I don't know, like 100 or 10 times what it costs to make. Like people were just going to see it in droves. So basically, it was like you can make anything you want at that point, right? Like and so of course, the story of Lawrence Arabia, which is something that had been stopped and started something like 20 times over.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It goes back it goes back so far that John Wayne wanted to play the titular role, that Alec Guinness wanted to play that role before he got moved to Faisal. Which, by the way, Laurence Olivier was originally going to play Faisal. Which is a wildly different movie too, and not as different as if
you're Lawrence. I'm Lawrence, good sir. I'm also Lawrence.
I'm Lawrence of Olivier.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's crazy. It's crazy to think like what a epic in scope and scale it is now, and how it's remembered historically versus some of the great epics of the past that are sort of maybe like more footnotes, right? Like it holds up. Like this is in like, I think it's AFI top 250, IMDb, it's in all of the lists.
Yeah.
And even if people have never seen it, they know that's that desert movie.
Yeah.
They're running around the desert in that one, right?
and I mean, there is fat you can trim from this movie, but there's not a lot. Like it's
a huge
minor
story.
Like what it's like seconds that you can cut from scenes, not like, that much really.
Well, if you're gonna give any kind of context.
How old, by the way, do you know how old Peter O'Toole was when they cast him in this?
27?
28. He was 28 years old.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess Alec Guinness definitely would have been too old then. How old was Omar Sharif?
I'll look, but I think he was a little bit older. He had a
He's
large
awesome.
Yeah. Well, so he had a large career in Egypt and in the Middle East, and he had been in all of these films, and he was really famous, but like it just hadn't reached that international status yet.
Well, he's in Dr. Zhivago, but I think that's
the next movie
right?
That's the next movie that David Lean made.
That's
Dr.
right. Yeah. It's like right after this. Yeah.
So David Lean's 3-movie run that he was on was Bridge on the River Kwai, this, and then Dr. Zhivago.
Jesus Christ, what a run. My God. Sounds okay.
Does he need to make any more films after that?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Omar Sharif's in Top Secret.
Well, so Omar Sharif, at least, I'm not sure how far ahead they cast him, but he was like 30 when this movie came out. So he wasn't that old either.
Well, but he's one of those dudes that it could be 22, it could be 45, doesn't really matter. He probably looks about the same,
He lived to 83 in 2015, and then Peter O'Toole was like 80 something in 2013. So both of them made it a long time. Also, Omar Sharif, got put in the news again for slapping a woman outside of a film festival.
Ooh.
That was but he was in his 80s and did that.
Yeah. Well,
that's why they didn't have any women on set.
Apparently, it's a preventative measure. Yeah,
makes sense. Now that you bring that up, it totally is clear.
He just won't stop. We had this brilliant female role, but he just kept slapping her.
This is always with the slapping that one. Great at the acting. Unfortunately, also great at the slapping.
Same thing with Sean Connery.
Exactly. He should have been in that Jeopardy bit with Sean Connery.
That's why they call him the Egyptian. They call him the Egyptian Sean Connery.
It's not because of the looks; it's because of the slapping people.
I think that when you're talking about the evolution of the Lawrence Arabia character, there's a scene with Faisal where he says the classic line, "Nothing is written," right?
Yeah.
And speaking of Sharif Ali, he says he turns that around where he's like, for some men, nothing is written unless they write it. And I think that's the key turning point to sort of understanding the story of where it is, where it's like, okay, dude, he's not just going along and in the drift of what's happening here. He's a participant. He's taken an active role in what he thinks is best based on the information that he has. And that's where it comes at, for a lot of people, it starts getting deeply problematic because it's all white savior stuff. But I think, Gene gave us a lot of context for that as well, and that you can have your preconceived notions with what's happening. I think that, there's a rhyme to the Fitzcarraldo here, right? That the real Fitzcarraldo, not so nice of a guy, actually. Not just a dreamer who liked opera. Real T. Lawrence, much more complicated figure than the Lawrence of Arabia, who just is cool guy running around the desert doing cool guy stuff.
Yeah,
that eventually gets a bunch of people killed, and that's actually what I wanted to. And I wanted this when Gene was on, but That's fine. I think the depiction of the actual horrors of war, when it gets down to like the battles, is pretty fantastic, especially for the time. Because if you think about, this is before we had, we think of war culture as being an endless recycling of Vietnam dramas, and coming from like the 70s and from that type of just like really showing like how horrible this is. But if you look at even well-regarded battle epics of earlier times from the 60s and before, it was sort of, bang, bang, and then like that's it. And then maybe you see a body, but like it's not like it's in a long shot somewhere. And
Did you ever see the Sam Fuller documentary, the what is it, the camera lens, the typewriter, the whatever? I forget, it was like three things.
No.
It's fantastic. Quentin Tarantino's in it, like for some reason, it just speaks the entire time.
It was
But
Colonel Mustard with the candelabra in the study.
but the Sam Fuller documentary, they have Sam Fuller there, and
Right.
he says this interesting thing about depicting war in the olden days, before
Right.
Peckinpah, really. I think Peckinpah was kind of the person that really modernized. In this film, I think, was a stepping stone. Like, you couldn't have had Peckinpah without the headshots in this movie. But he said that, I lied to people through film, because when somebody gets shot in real life, their arm falls off. There'd be like a body part here, body part there.
Yeah.
And in my films, they just fall over.
Right.
And that's kind of a good, way of thinking of it. And this movie actually gets, for the time, I mean, this is also during the Hays Code, right? Like, or was it a
Yeah,
Hays
but this is not
Yeah.
Hollywood.
It's not a code film at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but still, they were very like conservative about these things.
Well, the Hays Code is kind of broken. I mean, we talked about it with Psycho, right? Like the Hays Code was breaking down by this point, but like,
But yeah, we also
I
haven't
do
had
think
really
the Hays
Peckinpah
Code is-
breakout at this point either.
Yeah.
I don't think, because Peckinpah was kind of the first one to really like elevate violence in his films.
Yeah, and that is like a thing, like a feature of the the Hays Code breaking down, because if you're looking to have your movie played internationally, like you still have to kind of conform to some of the Hays Code stuff. I mean, like famously, like you have something like All Quiet on the Western Front, I guess,
Yeah,
where
the original one. Yeah.
yeah, like a lot of the depiction is in the eyes, like the eyes of war, and I think this movie does that well too. You have because there's like kind of a messiah thing going on this entire movie, where
Definitely, yeah.
Peter O'Toole comes back after presumably getting raped. I mean, like you can debate whether that's what happened, but that's really what they imply, like heavily, right? Like there's the heavy implication is that like he meets some Turks and then the guy's
historically they say that he never was the same after that, after being arrested.
Right.
So he comes back, and that's kind of when he's on his journey to Damascus, that's kind of his reincarnation moment, and they like kind of play that up like, oh well, he's back now, and this is like he's reincarnated as like a new figure, but the reincarnation.
There's a road to Damascus trope that
yeah.
But
there's
for a reason.
There's like a
well, it's John, but not Lawrence.
His reincarnation thing, right?
Paul?
Like
I can't remember.
he comes back with full bloodlust. Like he's fully. I mean, I'm not even going to say like gone native or whatever. Like but there's like something is wrong. Like even in his eyes, you can see it. Like his bloodlust after that scene and his overall demeanor has like fully changed, and he's like in his full force, I guess. And I don't know. It's kind of the depiction of that is so fucking wild, and I feel like this movie would not work definitely with someone like John Wayne. John Wayne couldn't play that.
No, there's no way. It wouldn't.
Nobody raped John Wayne.
Well, okay. Look what comes.
Put that thing away, Pilgrim.
But look what comes after this, right? Because we have like the Dirty Dozens a few years later, Battle of Algiers, which we've covered.
Yeah,
is a little bit after this, which again shows war in a completely different style. And you see like the National Liberation Front's like struggle for independence for French control. That like it looks like a documentary sometimes, right? Like the entire all of the methodology for showing the conflicts starts to change. And it's interesting. I never really thought about it because I think of it more as like, of course there's guns in here, but it's like more like, no, this is like a low-tech war, mostly with knives and stuff like that. But you really get the scale of the carnage. It's like one of the ugliest things in the entire film. I mean, it's pretty gruesome. I mean, I guess you have Paths of Glory, right? That was before this, but
But like the violence isn't really shown like this is.
Yeah, you don't see it as much, and it's interesting because you think like Platoon, Apocalypse Now, and like Full Metal Jacket, all those films of the 70s or whatever became much more commonplace to just show it.
Yeah. And I think that, again, that goes back to Peckinpah, which we've not covered any of his stuff, and I think
that's really strange.
Yeah, we absolutely should.
Although I've put his stuff in several of our like intros, he's like little like scenes. From various I think that's all true. The scale of the carnage in this is horrific. Like in a way that I don't even think in modern movies like I've seen something so like because there's no CGI, because there's no because they have to actually show it. And
it's in that huge wide scoped lens, just like you have those beautiful vistas and sweeping, beautifully shot cinematography, like these sweeping vistas and things like that. That like it's put towards like, oh yeah, this is what that looks like. What did you think this was going to look like? This is what it looks like, and it's horrendous. And this is the actual cost of this war.
Like I don't know if you guys Conan, you said this is your first time watching it the full 4 hours.
The entire time. Yeah, I've seen it. I could probably say technically I've seen it before that, but it was like, asynchronously as we'll change.
It's in the same boat here.
Right.
Yeah. So the Aqaba, the first half, right? Like the Aqaba battle, you really don't see the battle take place. I mean, you see like you see them charge, and then you see gunfire come at them, and there's the moments where you see him plug the guy that he went all the way back into the desert to save, and then instantly shoots a guy. It has to
I know. Oh, what a heartbreaker.
Yeah, and
but then even Lawrence is like, take no prisoners in that thing. Take no prisoners, and then like, well, they didn't take any prisoners.
So I'm saying, so you see that part of it, right? And then, but then the final battle of Damascus or whatever is so much bloodier. It's so much more epic in scope, I guess, and so much more like realistic. Like, but they build into it. They build up to it within those 4 hours. Like it's not like you see violence all the way through, which is kind of a fascinating way to do it because they're at war the entire time. But you don't see like the full 4 hours are not rife with violence. Like there's a little bit of violence, and then there's just carnage for the last hour of it.
And that's the civilized Ottoman train massacre.
Yeah,
like, that's probably the closest thing to that you see, which is nuts because then you see they're all like they're looting, like and they're like grabbing this stuff, and it's like you see like the guy
that clock.
The clock is amazing.
Yes.
That's what I imagine 1900s Fox News would be like. They're like, we now cut live to this Ottoman train getting ransacked.
What are they going to do with
the Fox News?
You can't hang the clock in a tent. Says 1900s.
It's the caravan. They're stealing clocks now. Yeah.
But that's why I said what about tribe on tribe violence? Like the whole movie, because there's this civilization versus barbarism question throughout this, and then Lawrence is kind of the mediation between the two, but kind of they make it seem kind of reluctant at first, and then obviously he gets raped and all bets are off. He goes he goes full promising young woman or whatever the fuck wait, isn't that the movie about the Saltburn lady that he goes?
Emerald Fennell made that movie. It's far superior to Saltburn, in my opinion. But yeah, I got the reference. Now, but also in the that's just I was surprised to hear it. When you see Lawrence at the train and the guy's going to shoot him, right? And it's played at it's kind of juiced for dramatic effect. And then he does shoot him, just kind of wings him, and then it's not on screen that he gets got with the sword guy. And then our journalist guy pops out and whoa, that dude killed that dude with the sword. That's wild. Let me take a picture.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah. And then the guy's like, no, that'll take my soul.
Right.
Smashes the guy.
Yeah.
He's just like my cat.
I also love the he's getting very messianic throughout that whole sequence, right? That's his
right. That's what you see, right? That's the buildup. That's in the life of Brian.
Yeah.
If you will, that's the buildup. Yeah.
And that line too of only a golden bullet can kill me.
Yes. Yeah, but it's so funny because that a motor a pretty mild motorbike accident kills him. So you're oh man, because he's so triumphant.
Those bicyclists had a dodging.
He's dodging multiple bullets. Pretty much they go past him, and it's he's on the Vista, and then it's bro, you're gonna die by just kind of hitting a bush.
He's like the magical honky most of the movie, and then suddenly he gets got by his own motorcycle. But that's a weird way to start this movie, I think, too. Like, because you're like, what? I thought is this the main dude? Like, what's happening?
I was watching Scorsese talking about this movie and like how it influenced later stuff that he did, and he was talking about how like because you're watching this whole thing from the point of view of Lawrence, kind of right, like you're in his space, watching it literally out of his eyes as he like meets his death. Just on a nice country drive. The one thing that can kill him is just country roads.
Yeah, but, like he goes through these internecine conflicts. he's like, again, biblically crosses the desert in a trip that it is highly implied, if not outright suggested, that there's not a good survival rate for this. Survives all that and then crashes his motorcycle. Like
he's kind of, he does compare himself to Moses crossing the desert. He hits the burning bush. That's what he.
But my favorite story about actually T.E. Lawrence that's not in this movie was the very first battle he was in. He gets thrown from his camel. He gets up to figure out why and realizes he accidentally shot the camel in the back of the head.
See, all right, so they shot that, but whatever happened during that shoot spooked the camel. They probably put a gun up against the camel. So it spooked the camel, throws the actual Peter O'Toole from the camel. He hits the ground. That's when he fucking fractured his spine. Almost dies.
No joke. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And he had to learn how to ride a camel for this. And
what I learned this month is never go on location to shoot anything. Do it all on the shot.
So he ended up coming up with a strategy after that, which is that he would just put like a ring of ice packs, pretty much like ice and like bubble wrap kind of stuff around his body, so that like he'd always be cushioned from the camel. And then he got bit by a camel. So
did he punch the camel at all? Like Schwarzenegger did?
A big problem about that though. That's why you don't see the Aqaba fighting, I think. But a big part of that is also he was just hammered on the camel. Like he was.
Well, that's not going to help.
Yeah, so he was drunk off his ass trying to stay on a camel, and then they mimed the shooting of the camel, and I guess the gunshot like scared the camel, but then throws like an incredibly drunk Peter O'Toole off of him into the whatever.
I think he'd land better being drunk.
But they said that like he got within inches of actually dying.
Jeez, yeah, like
maybe
I'm saying,
he did. He kept loose because he was drunk, and would have been much worse if he was sober.
He also would disappear though. He would disappear with Omar Sharif. They'd go into Egypt and start gambling. So he ended up gambling more than what his salary was for the movie during the all the money he had on him during the shoot of the movie.
Just living out treasure with Sierra Madre.
Yeah.
You got Michael Douglas slapped in the face with alligators. You had Jason Robards contracting dysentery. It seems like just I don't know. If you got a chance to go shoot an epic outside, just watch yourself. Apparently, because there's a lot of animals that.
And they also do say that crocodile was the Omar Sharif of alligators.
I appreciate this is not modern veterinary advice. I appreciate that.
Whatever happened to the Joe Camel, the strong and silent type?
I don't know. He got banned whenever we were kids. When I was a kid, so there you go.
Is that from The Sopranos? That's Tony Sopranos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's whatever happened to Gary Cooper, but
yeah, I got it. Shall we do Letterboxd one-liners?
Yeah.
Cool. So Letterboxd, of course, a place for film lovers to talk with and to each other about the movies they love, maybe the movies that they didn't love, the movies that they insist are queer-coded. This one. And of course, it's not just the Siskel's and Eberts of the world. Everyone gets to have their say. Bottom-up democracy, best expressed succinctly for the purposes of this bit, where they're collected together and presented for us to react to. These are the Letterboxd one-liners for Lawrence of Arabia. Let's go. Watched it in 3 sittings with my parents. At some point, my dad turned to me and said, "They really aren't trying to make this guy look good."
Which is funny because his brother had script approval.
Right. It's different times, man.
His brother's like, I have grudges, so.
Even the screenshot is epic, by the way. Can I just point that out? But
yeah.
They call him Orance because he doesn't take L's.
Dude, it's so fucking relatable as someone that's been called like Forrest before, like Boris, like Florist. Like I've had people like just mishear what like, which you wouldn't think that they'd mishear it that much, but like for them to call him like to think his name is like L Orance, I'm like, sounds like me. Like I'm Forrest of Arabia. That's why I made that joke.
Exactly. Lawrence was wildin'.
Yeah. He really is like manic pixie dream Brit.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how Lawrence is always about to cry or about to slay or both.
He's smart enough to like not cry usually in front of the men. Don't let me cry in front of the men.
Exactly. Saves that for private. All that to die on a motorbike.
Right? That's the thing. That's fucking crazy. I mean, to be fair though, like, you know, the whole Jesus story, right? Like he's resurrected. You don't find out, like, I don't know what the fuck happens to Jesus. Like they don't cover that.
He died on a motorbike is what I
So for all you know, like Jesus got thrown from a camel and then died again or something. Like
they were trying to do a gun stunt with Jesus. So many camels.
Yeah,
I feel actually kind of bad for Peter O'Toole, like because he got so fucked up by having to 2 years on the back of a camel pretty much for this whole shoot, and then every time he went to places like David Letterman had him come out on the back of a camel, like
it's the last thing you want is to be on a camel.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Camels are like really like bastards. I mean, I've ridden a camel before. They're not fun.
Yeah, they have them at a Marine Rural Africa, USA. I've ridden a camel and an elephant, both.
I've only ridden horses. I've ridden quite a few horses. But
Speaking of horses, I will say the one and only time that I paused the movie was because when they're riding the camels, the group's riding the camels, and then the guy comes in with the horse. I was like, Arabian horses, right? And then I was trying to remember what the distinction was with horses and like where they came from, this and that. Anyway, I paused the movie and read up a lot about Arabian horses, and that was literally the only time that I would even have dared to pause this movie.
There's also quite a few sheep in their convoy during that final battle. And I'm like, did those sheep had to have died? Like, did they just like, is that like grilled sheep? Like the sheep get hit by fucking artillery or something, and they're like,
yeah, I don't know. That's for the smaller members of the party.
Yeah, they're riding like a lambs to the slaughter.
Yes, not a woman in sight, just boys being boys.
Promising young chap.
It's very much a dude's rock movie, for sure. Lawrence Muad'Dib of Arabia.
His eyes are glowing in this.
His eyes are so blue. Yeah.
I tried to capture that with
funny. When the Turks take him hostage,
yeah,
and they're like looking at him, they're like trying to figure out like what, like, you know, where is this guy from? Like they're trying to figure out like who, like, is he like some kind of weird Arab they've never seen before? Like, and I'm like, dude, his eyes are blue and his hair is fucking blonde, dude. Like what?
What do you think is happening here? Yeah, exactly. Dune prequel. Add a worm in, and it would have been a 5 out of 5.
Imagine this movie with a worm, but they don't mention that there's gonna, like, you know what I mean? Like it just
shows
within
up.
the 4 hours span. Yeah. They're like, we got to get past the sandworms. You're like, sandworms?
Sandworms? What are you talking about?
Yeah, he just randomly rides one into Erebus.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. Some people dip out after the intermission, so they don't remember that one of the sandworms shows up after that.
Yeah. KT actually, not only did she dip out, she actually walked home from the theater that she was at, and she didn't drive because she left the person who drove her to the theater at the theater.
Wow, that's mad, boy. Yeah. I've been mad at movies before, but I don't know if I've ever been that mad.
That was impressive.
Yeah, your rage is impressive. Alec Guinness has the most bizarre screen presence of all time. Why does he speak like he's casting an ancient enchantment?
Prince Faisal. That's a name I have not heard in a long time.
Those are Letterboxd one-liners for Lawrence of Arabia. Please follow the show at Movie Night Extra for our HQ account. We're posting stories of all the many wonderful episodes that we're doing, all the attendant content that comes within. Follow us there. Forrest of Arabia is at Always Flacco. What about tribe on tribe violence? That's all we're asking. You can follow him.
Fucking Fox, like 20th century, like British Fox News would have been so insufferable.
Oh my
God.
God.
Just they're like, yeah, perhaps we could end colonialism, but What about tribe on tribe violence? I don't seem to see anyone in the anti-colonial movement upset about that.
I am Conan Neutron at Conan Neutron. Neutron of Arrakis is what they call me on the streets, on these sandy streets. And you can follow me for the highbrow, the populous fare, the middle tier, all that stuff. Criterion Challenge. You can join me on that if you feel so inclined, or just follow along. Film School Dropouts, doing all that stuff at Conan Neutron on Letterboxd. J. Andrew White Devil World is an experienced 27. And he is logging all the weirdest stuff so you don't have to, or maybe you can, not for me to judge, on Letterboxd at Right About Now too. Please follow him as well. White Devil, take us away with the plugs, please.
Wait, we gotta do our tonight's podcast is brought to you by Yebiga, a Balkan Rakia spirit plum brandy that's bringing Serbia to the American shores in an authentic and appreciative way. Care of Billy Gould, basis for Faith No More, and Rakia Appreciator. Rakia is a traditional spirit enjoyed at weddings, funerals, and life events. However, more and more it's being enjoyed everywhere on a night out with friends or as a casual drink. Get a bottle today in liquor stores and bars across America. Go to yabiga.com to see where it's available near you.
Yabiga, we speak its name.
I like how I managed to find random ancient Serbian copyright-free music this week, and I typed in Arabic music copyright-free for that intro.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What are you going to do for next week? Tune in and find out, people.
Yeah.
White Devil, take us away with the plugs, please.
Like fucking like racist, like a white guy clearly made this Native American music of all time.
That's why it's copyright free, people. Well, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, please do those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and of course the big ask, because we all serve the algorithm. Watch the video to the end. That allows other movie fans to find our content, and that allows you to hear that great Conan Neutron song, which is the last time it's being played this year.
Oh yeah, that's right. It is half as long as the film in question, as opposed to ones where it's twice as long as the film in question. You're welcome. Yeah. Movie night adventure theme to be retired. I don't know,
until next time.
Until next time. Yeah, exactly. It's never says goodbye when it's an adventure. It's just until next time. But yeah.
I feel like that's a line for something like we never say goodbye. We only say till next time.
It's true. But yeah, that's true. That's true. I like that one. That's a good one.
He's looking at you. He's looking at you, Theme.
I mean, we'll probably there'll probably be something down the line. I could probably get.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Peckinpah. Come on, let's do it.
We can. We're talking about bringing it Fantasia to anyway. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. There's a lot because we need to still talk about Twitch. If you're watching us over on Twitch, do the Twitch thing, throw us a sub. If you happen to have an Amazon Prime account, you can actually subscribe to us for free. Does not cost you a dime, but actually really genuinely helps us out.
Get us at least one dime.
Yes, possibly. More like a fraction of a penny. I don't know. I don't know how this works. But yeah, eventually we'll have a dime for that. But we thank you very much if you're able to do any of that stuff. Of course, find us on social media. We're on X or Twitter. I live named X. I can't believe that. She did name Twitter. Whatever it is. And Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Facebook. Find us wherever you happen to get your social media. Chances are we're there.
Chances are we are.
Yeah. So find us at those places and say hi.
Yes.
And if you also want to say hi to us, join our Discord. We just did a movie night on Sunday, which was a lot of fun.
That was great. Christina hosted a viewing of Oppenheimer, and that was lovely. That was nice to see it on a small screen, like the director intended.
Yes. In a smaller window on the small screen.
Yeah, exactly. In a small browser window with a bunch of ads running, as the director intended. No, that's true. Join the Discord. Discord is great. It's if you like chiming in on the chat, it's like that, except for archival.
Yes. I remember trying to watch Nomadland in Discord at one point.
Yeah,
and being like, this is hard to.
This is not how this was meant to be seen. Yeah. Can you imagine doing Lawrence of Arabia in the Discord?
Oh my God, I think people would die.
Yeah. What's happening? I can't even see. I need a magnifying. Is that a dude? Is he riding towards us? What's happening?
Is that a guy in brown face, or is he really an Arab?
I don't know. That blur sounds like Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I'm not sure.
Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, we have a Discord.
yeah.
Hop over there and have more hijinks like that.
I'll throw a link in the chat. I think we're keeping it pretty loosey goosey. Eventually, it's going to be patrons only, but we're trying to make it happen. So
speaking of patrons, we have a
Yes.
Patreon. You can join it and get access to our after parties, which we've been talking about so many other things. We didn't get a chance to talk before the show about an after party today.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if we're up for that.
And I guess we're still not. I'm down. That's fine.
I have nothing going on.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I go either way, but I just wanted to.
Cool.
Oh yeah, Lawrence of Arabia.
We'll have our intermission, and then we'll come back for the final part of our show where we're.
I mean, I saw like 10 clips.
Link to the Discords in the chat for folks that we're looking for that. Join up. We're using it more and more, and we like it because it's our space.
People are talking about it more and more. The movie night show.
It's not just everybody's talking about it more and more. Much discussion. But I like that it's not. I mean, I guess it is a walled garden still, but it's not subject to the algorithm. So we have various text channels for things. Give us your cinematic hot takes. That's it. That's
behind our walled garden.
Christina dropped one and then didn't defend it. She just took off, which is hilarious. Kind of a power move, frankly.
Truly.
He was trying to probably get people to argue with her on Twitch, and she's like,
she said Clint Eastwood sucks, and then she didn't bother to clarify or defend her position.
Okay, John Wayne.
I was like, all right. And someone was like, as an actor, as a director, and she was not there to answer. I don't know, which is funny because she's the biggest active Discord user.
As an RNC speaker.
Anyway, whatever.
Yes, Conan is over there, showing
Yes.
off Protonic Reversal behind him.
True.
Because that logo is the ever presence in our episode.
That's right. Free advertising for me on a show that is far less popular. Thank you.
Oh, maybe after another 1,000 episodes, we'll catch up to you in popularity.
Exactly. Nobody will notice a difference. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
But who was on this week?
So the Zach Blair episode is the one that's now up for in the general feed. I've got Greg Norton from Husker Du coming back on. So if you're, I should have said, I've got a guess that'll flip your wig, but that would have worked because that's the name of a Husker Du record. But yeah, who's also in a fantastic new band as well. And that's exciting because when I had him on last time, which was a very, very all-encompassing episode, Ultra Bomb wasn't a thing yet. And we've been talking about doing this for a while. So, but yeah, that last episode was really comprehensive. I expect this to be the same. Greg's awesome. So glad to have him back, and that should be a good one.
All right. And of course, you can get all of that early.
Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, ProtonicReversal.com, streaming on YouTube and Twitch.
And you can get these episodes early by going to Patreon and subscribing there. $1 a month.
Yep.
Gets you early episodes. So, booyah.
I just dropped a Patreon exclusive that is a montage of all the Why Do You Do What You Do answers from episode 201 to 369.
I really like that you asked that question for Platonic. I feel like that's a good segue into having like a larger discussion about stuff.
It's kind of cool, because obviously some people go for like a really short, funny answer. Some people go really in depth and like get philosophical about it. Like it's pretty, and it's kind of interesting to hear it all at once. And I did that for episode 200, and a bunch of people liked it, and they're like, "Are you ever going to do that again?" And I'm like, "That was a lot of work, so probably not." But I did it, so there you go. And yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's 3 hours long. So it's just that question, 3 hours long. You don't. I don't say who it is. You have to figure that out. But that's the point. Is it's not about any one person. It's about everybody answering that. So there you go.
I like the pre 90s version of that though. Is to be like, well, to get pussy, of course.
Get laid, clearly. Yeah, it's the only way you get anything. Why would you do anything else?
Yeah. Well, one day I heard a girl say, I like a guy who plays guitar, so I learned guitar.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Yeah, and you know who else plays guitar is Conan Neutron over there. And,
that's
right. You can go to check out his band Conan Neutron and Secret Friends over at neutronfriends.bandcamp.com.
Yep, and we have tour dates early March with McCluskey, Los Angeles, San Francisco. We're playing Bakersfield as well, and Ventura. Yeah, actually, Greg Norton was also in Gang Fun. Yeah, we talked about that last time with Dave King from the Band Plus. We did talk about that last time. Let the record show. But yeah, if you want to see me play music on the West Coast, you're stoked. Where else it's gonna wait? But there's gonna be some other. I can't announce them until like three weeks from now. But there's some other stuff coming up too. So not just West Coast.
Okay, very cool. And Adult Prom, of course, is your new split LP with Lung. You know, check that out. Get that from, again, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com.
Caterwall.
Yes.
May 24th through Monday, May 27th, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Mortimers and Palmers. Full band announcement went out this week, which is all these bands. And 4-day pass is available now. Single-day pass is available on Monday along with the schedule. So Fun Machine officially spun back up for that.
Yes, I got to say Scrunchies is the band I'm second most excited to see now.
There you go. We got Dead coming over from Australia, Part Chimp from the UK. It's going to be a good time. We've got Oxbow. We got Brainiac. Brainiac's playing. It's crazy. Jay Robbins from Jawbox. Anyway.
Wasn't one of the guys from who was playing with USA Nails is actually part Chimp?
Blacklisters. Does he play Part Chimp too? I don't think so.
I don't know.
The drummer for USA Nails is in Blacklisters. You know what, man? This is we'll save it for after.
Whatever. Yeah.
You think so? And he was on it for his bit TV. So yeah.
Yeah. Christina's not here, but I just want to direct people to her Patreon if you want to help her out.
What do you mean? She's right here.
Yeah. Oh, Christina, didn't see you there.
Subscribe to me on Twitch.
But yeah, check out her Twitch channel. Support her over on Patreon, patreon.com Cosmopolitics / there's a slash in there. So there you go. Those are your marching orders there. And Djene isn't really streaming much right now. So, but you can check him out if you want to hear more from Djene. He just did an episode with Ben about Battlestar Galactica. Nice. So, if you want a fun little dive into early 2000s politics and Battlestar Galactica, you got a great chance to hear more from Djene there.
We really haven't had him on this show in a really long time.
I know. And I enjoy having him on
earlier, but no, he's great.
Well, he was like always helping out with putting together the This Is Revolution episodes.
All the crossover episodes, yeah. It'd be funny if Christina got on late, a woman showing up at the end like the nuns in the movie. Nice.
I posted those pictures from a year ago when we all went to the city to work on that.
For the This Is
that's
Revolution.
Crazy. That's crazy. That was like a year ago. But for some reason, Matt Leck apparently thought he was Jake, like the Give Them an Argument producer, and like screenshot of the picture of just like Jake's face. I was like, wow, I was really gone. That doesn't even look like me. And I just looked at it. I was like, that's not even you.
That's because it isn't you. It's a good reason why. Yeah, I was talking with Marcus for hours about sports, I guess. I don't know, which is funny because I'm not even into sports. I was definitely
talking about baseball. I remember that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, it's coming back to me now. That year-long conversation I had while inebriated was coming back to me now.
Yeah, and the menu, if I remember correctly.
Yes, which we still have not had him on yet for. But we should do that.
Yes, we absolutely should. But I think that's it for the plugs. If you want to take it away for us.
I think we're well, except the fact that we're doing Oscar month starting next week with Killers of the Flower Moon with Karthik, who has not been on in a minute.
Yeah, we got to get our brown friends who haven't been on for a while.
And when he's been on recently, it's when I've been out, so I haven't been on stream with him for a really long time. But
yeah,
he's a big Killers of the Flower Moon supporter, so that should be a supporter. What is like a political party? Anyway,
he's voting Killers of the Flower Moon this year.
Tell you, it's going to be a political party when he's on.
Flower Moon, and I vote.
He's a big booster for that. We dropped all the episodes we're doing. We're doing Killers of the Flower Moon. We're doing Past Lives. We're doing Holdovers. We're doing May December, which was unfairly snubbed. We're doing American Fiction and Poor Things. And really excited about discussing all those. Got a murderer's row of folks that are coming on that are in the orbit of this show. So, and then we're live streaming the actual Oscars too, like right after we get back from tour. So,
and hashtag things like Oscars.
El Conde. I would love to talk about El Conde. We did not fit it in. But yeah, the Pinochet, aka the Pinochet vampire movie. It's great. I think only me and Eileen Jones saw it, I feel. But it's great.
I was going to say where the hashtag things like Oscars 2024, Academy Awards,
right.
Academy Awards stream.
Exactly. Award-winning stream.
No,
people won awards on the stream. I'm not saying our stream won a...
Like what awards? I don't know. Tune in to find out.
Yeah, exactly. Tune in to find out, indeed.
But Andy, final thought on Lawrence of Arabia, and we're gonna jump to the after party. So we're probably like a good summation, but we'll have more time to discuss it too.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah. No, this is a absolutely beautiful film. Like I said, is there fat in the film? Yeah, but it's like we're talking seconds, as opposed to like entire scenes or anything like that. It's nothing.
Movies.
Yes.
No names mentioned.
It's incredible. Like it really does tell a great story. It has such great moments of build up suspense and pays off for the most part, which is great too. And because they did everything so well, it became so influential. You see it in Star Wars and Stargate and probably Star Trek now at this point. To make the Star trilogy complete. But it really is just a fantastic film. And I'm kind of glad we actually got to talk a little bit about the politics and the history too, as well, because movies like this sometimes need a little bit of that.
Yeah, need context. Conan.
Yeah, I think this is correctly regarded as one of the greatest cinematic achievements and most beautiful films ever made. I think it's just a great movie, and it's you can take aside the fact that it's a colonialist epic. But the action sequences, the shot composition, cinematography, the lighting, this film transports. And there's a laundry list of amazing things it's influenced that are as stunning as the filmmaking. Andy mentioned a couple of them just now. I think Peter O'Toole is very compelling and maybe slightly baffling as a leading man here, but I think the offness is something I actually find that quite enjoyable. The brown face is a bummer, but I think this is a beautiful sandstorm of an epic that's correctly regarded in history as a piece of art. And even if there may be problems with the story it is telling being correct, it's still an epic tale. So very cool to close this out for Adventure Month. Also, bring back intermissions.
I like the detail that they didn't even think to cast any Arabs in lead roles. Just they're just surprised that Omar Sharif showed up and was like, I'll audition for this. And they're like,
we didn't think
for the role of
the
role of Sharif Ali. You think you can?
We can't have you as an Englishman. That would have been great if he was like the general.
Yeah,
we're trying to get a French guy to play him.
Yeah.
And then the French guy dropped out.
We were going to get Sir Bartholomew to play that role, but I guess you could do that.
Lawrence.
I'm actually surprised Roger Delgado's out of this movie.
Lawrence,
he's a swarthy Brit.
I don't think us Arabs are very barbaric, do you?
Well, and it's so, and I mentioned it earlier. It's so funny to have watched Life and Times of Colonel Blimp, which is not an amazing title, but it's based off of it's a comic that was around in the UK Times, and they basically made this incredibly sprawling gorgeous Powell Pressburger epic about it that is surreptitiously anti-war in a very funny way. But it's hilarious that it's like having seen that in the same month as this, without really thinking about what we were ending it with. I was like, oh yeah, keep meaning to see this. Let's see this. I was like, wow, this is awesome. But yeah, this goes to show you two sides of the same coin to a certain degree. So.
Yeah. All right,
join us for the after party.
Yeah,
Here, I'll listen more.
Where we're gonna
hear about all the other movies I saw this month. Hint,
and
it's a lot.
and you know, I might show up in brown face.